Hello, hello, Plusers. Welcome to a new episode of this podcast talking with Erasmus Plus professionals. Today I'm very excited because we got a very special guest that actually at some moment was my trainer. This person is coming from Denmark. He's a trainer since 2013, which makes a lot of experience. He's specialized in very different topics. He's been working in very different topics from gamification to project management, leadership, gender, innovative and creative, different types of projects. Also AI. We will have the pleasure to talk about many of these topics today with him. Despite being a trainer and working in over 30 projects, he's also an engineer in the Central Hospital in Copenhagen, where he is helping the decision making part to clinical staff. And currently, he's doing a PhD. Totally a top person. Thank you very much for being with us, Fred.
Thanks for being here.
How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing good. I mean, lots of stuff going on. It's very interesting. We're gearing up to the next project that we're doing here in June in Czech Republic, and because we finalized a lot of products that we were building as part of a Key Action 2 recently. And these products we now get to test. Of course, we tested it during the Key Action 2, but now we get to test them as part of, now that they're finished. And we're super excited to do this. It's been like a long time coming. A lot of these things that we've been working on for years that we now get to like show in their final form to the world. So that's really exciting. And then, of course, as you mentioned, projects at work, PhD is going great. All of that stuff. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, I think that many people in the project was wondering when you were explaining to us what you do. When do you sleep?
Yeah. Actually, I do manage to get quite a lot of sleep in, and the trick is to make sure that when you're working on one thing, that you're also kind of working on something else. So, like a lot of the work that I do at, let's say, the PhD project can be used in some of the other projects that I do at work. So I get to kind of double dip, and the same with the trainings that we're doing, making sure that things that we build for specific training also can work for other trainings, so we don't have to start from scratch all the time. That really cuts down on the amount of work you have to do every time. So while it might appear that I'm doing everything like quite a lot all the time, actually there is room for relaxation there.
Yes, that's great. I think that's a very nice technique, no? That you are learning and you are working in two things at the same time, and that you can reuse things. I wonder, like, was that the case when you started joining Erasmus? How was your the beginning? How did you started in Erasmus in 2013?
Yeah, that was I guess it was a happy accident. So I did not know anything about Erasmus Plus prior to going on an Erasmus Plus project. I started doing local volunteering here where I used to live, like north of Copenhagen. And some of my friends from high school was basically, they were involved in the local volunteer work, and they asked me, hey, do you want to come if you're not doing anything else in a particular week during summer holiday? And I said, sure, what's the worst that can happen? And then I was doing local volunteering for a couple of years, and then in the middle of the night, I remember this very vividly, like 8:30 in the evening on a Thursday evening, one of my friends called me and said, hey, Fred, I have this opportunity for you to go to England. It's a cool project about social entrepreneurship. It's free and you get to meet a lot of cool people. And I thought that it was a scam.
Like everyone, no? At the
Yeah,
beginning of
because
Erasmus,
it
everyone.
seems like yeah, that's great, but what's the catch, right? When's the payment gonna come? But I trusted the friend. Some might say that was a mistake, but anyways, I went, and the project was really amazing. Especially the people there, and that's what really hooked me on Erasmus Plus work was the really cool people you get to meet there. Oftentimes, there's a very, let's say, shared understanding of, let's say, being European or like being international and working towards bettering the world to some extent. Whether it works or not,
Hmm.
it's, I mean, up for implementation. But then I kept going because I thought it was really amazing, and I jumped on all the opportunities, and then I could, like most other people who get the taste of Erasmus Plus work. And then after a year or so, one of the people who were arranging the project in England reached out to me and said, not just me, but some of my colleagues as well here locally in Denmark, and said, we wanted to do a project in Denmark now. It's part of like a European international umbrella organization that our local club was also a member of. And we said, yeah, sure. And so I got kind of involved in the project planning quite early on. And then once a year, twice a year, I was helping out doing these mainly logistics and helping out with managing the projects. And then at some point it was like, hey, do you also want to run some of the sessions? And I said, sure, why not? And then that's how it started. And then I just kept going and going. And then, I met my wife through this Erasmus Plus as well. And we started doing projects together as well. And that's how it's been since 2017.
2017, so it's already 7 years. I remember we met in the year of the COVID 2020 at the end of in October, and you were already experienced at that time. I learned a lot with you. Actually, we were talking at that time we had the gender topic, and I was impressed of how you managed, because it is a very political sensitive topic, let's say, and we were impressed among participants talking about how well carried it was, because it could have led to conflicts, and you manage it and you really sailored the gender stream very very nicely. It's interesting that also you started in Erasmus when the UK was back into the European Union, so you had that chance, right?
Yes, very much so. And it was actually a huge loss for us because a lot of our really good colleagues are from what they call the Five Nations, right? So England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, and they were just completely cut off. And so a lot of these types of projects kind of fell away, unfortunately. But hopefully, I mean, at some point they're gonna regret it and start coming back into the fold, right?
We hope so. At least recently, I've heard that at least for Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, they are back. So I hope that they are little by little coming and making steps back into the family. Because at the end, if we are in the European Union and England's, I think British are not there and English are not there, it's like a big miss. Well, coming back to the topic, you started in 2013, fully implementing projects in 2017, and since then, over 30 projects have come out. No,
Yeah,
and
something like this.
something like that. Let's say open numbers. If it's 28, nobody's going to judge you. If it's 33, uh, it's fine as well. It's difficult to make the numbers after all these years, because we don't carry out a calendar, right? Nevertheless, I think it's very important to the people that is listening to us, to if they can learn from an experienced trainer. And one of the most critical things that we always face in projects is like when we are facilitating or when we are training, we might have and we might face very difficult situations, and handling them out is crucial in order to have a project success. So maybe you can share one of the stories or one of the specific situations that you had for us to picture also how you manage it, and how we can take some maybe tools from you in order to be able to deal with them.
Yeah, and so lots of different problems can arise during trainings, and I think while I haven't I also talk to a lot of trainers in my network and stuff, and while I haven't experienced everything there is to offer, I think I've experienced quite a lot of them. The most difficult issues I find personally, or the things that I've felt have had the most impact on me as a trainer, are the issues related to participants. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's not like necessarily people get hurt or people get lost, but it's like the people that kind of don't want to be there or kind of are ruining the experience for everyone else.
Hmm.
So one specific training comes to mind, the training we did in Czech Republic about being trainers, which is why it was so ironic, right? There was this one particular person who, I mean, they were also a bit, let's say, older than some of the other participants, but they also really they came with the understanding that they were already experts and they didn't need to know anything or didn't need to learn anything.
Hmm.
And so they really tried to kind of ruin the vibe. Um, and also, they had some very, let's say, specific opinions about how to behave around other people. And when people said, "Oh, that actually makes me uncomfortable. Could you please not do this?" They really tried to assert their dominance. I think I was there with my wife, and I think we handled it pretty well. But it was a lot of trying to kind of contain this problem so it didn't affect everybody else. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, I felt like at the end of the project that the person didn't even really understand why people didn't want to work with them.
Hmm.
But it ended up being basically sitting them down and saying, "All right, either you participate or you just go." And in the end, they were not happy, but they decided they wanted to stay. And then they were a little bit sour in the corner for the past like 3 days or last 3 days of the project. Um, but yeah, it's mainly this when people are there, but they don't really want to be there, or they're kind of ruining the space, the content for everyone else.
Yeah, particularly the special situation is that they were getting trained to become trainers. So I guess that trainers, we should have even a different approach, even always, no? Like we should always be more sensitive about the group dynamics. So imagine this person being later on a trainer, and we can call this type of participants, I think, like root and apple, no? Like the ones that is there and that wants to kind of get everyone else's routen as well. And so what did you specifically do with them? Like you sit down at some point when you thought that the situation was going out of your control and that this person was not accepting the power dynamics and etc., and you sit down with them, the person, and you said, hey, either you stay, either you go, but this cannot keep going.
Yeah, so there was like two episodes also. There was the one where we sat them down and said that there was basically me and the co-trainer, my wife. We sat them down and said, you either you either participate and do engage with the topic, or you leave. But before this, there was a mediation situation, and this one I did not directly participate in. But it also goes to show something about coordination and planning. So I think it's actually interesting. But basically, uh, one of the people, so this participant, was not really respecting boundaries that much with some of the other participants, and so the participant that felt like their boundaries were not respected asked us to mediate a situation, like say, hey, could you please deal with this? And so uh, my wife set them down, both of them, and tried to mediate, and they were not very happy with this, and the situation wasn't really resolved. But what happened was also that in this space, what made it also really difficult is that we hadn't really decided on what is going to happen in this type of situation. This is not something that we had planned for, because we were not expecting participants to come on a training for trainers and not wanting to participate. And so all of a sudden, I am there with the other 23 participants or something like this. And I am supposed to, in 5 minutes, run the session that I did not design, or I did not even know anything about, because it was like, yeah, it's going to be fine. It is one of those times when we were a little bit late with preparation of this particular session, because we had some
Mhm.
ideas we were bouncing off. And so
It
I'm
happens.
sitting there like 10 minutes into the training, so I'm trying to stall, trying to get like, okay, is it going to happen? Am I just going to run something that I don't know anything about, or what is going to happen? And then like she comes back 10 minutes in, and I'm like doing an energizer really, really slowly, and then having people discuss, okay, so how is it going, and so on. Like really looking at my watch, thinking, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I knew that this was going to happen at some point. I wish it wasn't that right now. But I
Wow.
mean, again, we managed to solve the situation, and I don't think the participants really noticed that much. But we had a long discussion afterwards also about, oh, maybe this is the type of thing that we should be more prepared for. And since then, we have really tried hard to not put each other in this type of situation.
Yeah, totally. I think that's something I never thought about it, but I think that would be one of my fears. No, that once we need to implement an activity, we don't have it ready, or the one of the main elements of the activity might be a person, might be some material, might be something are not there, and then what do we do? But this is something that we can plan in advance. Maybe we can have a joker activity, always prepare, no, in case something happens. Okay, we do this and that and whatever, and it might work. But also mediation, that's true, like how to mediate, this is complicated as well. Also, if you have a root and apple, a very like a complicated, difficult participant, how to address. Well, still, we learned that I like this approach, because at the beginning you were like, okay, we got it, and we at some point say you go or you leave. But it's very interesting also to see that there's been a process, no? And you start the first day, you sit down in the circle, you start already noticing the attitude. Participants get warm. There is already a little conflict. There is a mediation going on, and then eventually the third, fourth day, you need to sit down with the participant and say, well, we still have 3 4 more days. It's the middle of the project. We already see, the direction that this is taken, this is taking, either you do this or you do that. But there are many steps before, and I think it's important for us as trainers not to identify that's something that maybe came with experience, right? That you were able, now that you sit down in the circle, and the first 2 3 sessions, the first day, you already spotted the potential problematic participants.
Yes, I mean, first of all, of course, you're paying a lot of attention, but you're also really spending more and more time listening to what is going on in the room with the participants themselves, and also listening to the participants. I felt in the early days of doing activities, I was so focused on making sure that I delivered the thing I promised to deliver.
Hmm.
So I was really focused on making sure that I was super prepared, making sure that I was that no time was wasted not being ready or not being on top of things.
Hmm.
And as I have grown, I feel like I'm spending less time about this, not because it's not as important, but because I've done the work already, and I kind of feel comfortable that I can, I don't need to worry that much up to a session or up to a training. So now I can spend more time being with the participants and listening into them and feeling the vibe of the group, because a lot of times these type of issues are not necessarily happening in the room where you are because you're an authority figure as a trainer. So
Hmm.
people tend to behave in front of you, even if they're not behaving outside or when you're not there. So then also listening to what people are talking about and asking them questions and trying to figure out what is going on when you're not there, not just in the training room, but also, if you're booking a hotel, what's happening in the hotel rooms, what's happening when people go out. Again, to get us to again make the space as safe or as welcoming for everybody, like inclusive.
Hmm.
Because also what happens outside of the space affects what happens inside the space. So
Totally,
yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it's sometimes we use the strategy of having one of the team members trying to infiltrate it into the within the participants at some level, in somehow. And this kind of inner info is very very top for what you are saying. At the end, is also you need to sail the mood of the participants, right? This leads me that also, like when we are facing a training, there are many outcomes and inputs that might happen, that and insights that we might not expect. For your experience as a trainer, with this already over 10 years of experience, what would be an advice for a beginner trainer, let's say, with less experience, uh, for preparing mentally and emotionally for the unexpected outcomes that might happen in a training?
I think so. On one way, a lot of stuff can be managed with planning, and knowing someone who is experienced or having participated in a lot of activities already gives you a sense of what are the types of things that can happen, of course. And so having this experience, not even when you're not in the driver's seat per se, right, when you are the one facilitating,
Hmm.
is very helpful. It could be if you're helping out with logistics, let's say, or you're helping out with the practicalities, or you're just participating in a few trainings, or you're also having a co-trainer, so you don't have to always be the one making decisions or doing the facilitation. Really helps. Then, of course, there are a lot of things that you could prepare for, like very classically, just doing risk management and mitigation plans. So, like, what happens if a participant gets hurt and they need to go to the emergency ward? Right? What happens if with 3 participants miss their flights? What happens if participants start a fight or whatever? Like, a lot of these things is, let's say, while it's very rare that it happens, it's really good to be prepared for it, so you kind of know what happens. So like planning for these things, but also then as you grow as a trainer, but like being comfortable in your expertise facilitating, and then focusing on building these social skills or interpersonal skills to mitigate these things. Then of course working really well with your co-trainer if you have one, and your logistics team if you have one, to also make sure that the participants that are coming are the type of people that you expect. A lot of issues with participants arise because we don't vet the participants enough, let's say. So they come with completely different expectations of what is going to happen. And then they get frustrated, and then they take it out on the rest of the group. So these type of things, making sure that you're prepared and work well with the team that is around you, and then just making basic plans for what happens when things go wrong.
That's very interesting. Like, of course, we can always prepare. It's true that we cannot be ready for everything, but at the same time, it's true that the main kind of problems that might happen, we can kind of be one step in advance, no? Because of course, a fight is something very common. Maybe a romantic affair that goes a bit of out of control. That's something we can also get ready. The flights, I remember also in our project in Czechia that it was in the middle of COVID, so we were expecting many people not to be able to come. Actually, I think your flights were canceled like two, three, or maybe more times. You were the most damaged by COVID. At the end, we all arrived. I remember, or most of us, at least most of us, we arrived. But it's interesting. Yeah, I'm measuring plan. Something that makes us being ready is a very top thing. And as you said, getting experience. This is something I'm experienced right now. That once you are also getting more trust and more experience with your logistics teams, it's getting easier and easier to manage problems that maybe at the beginning were much bigger, and now it's like, okay, you look at someone at the eyes, you already communicating, you know how you are going to handle it. Simple, you also more mature, and you are also more stable. Very top things. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned it, like having co-trainers. Having co-trainers is a question that many people have. No, like usually there is at least for sure one trainer, but most of the people work with two trainers. In your case, you are most of the times going with your wife. What's your experience? What do you recommend? Being one main trainer, or also in balances, no? Like a main trainer with a support, two main trainers, like main trainer with assistant as a co-trainer, or two main trainers, or what's the mood or the figure that works the best for you?
For me personally, it works best with a peer co-trainer. So like you're equal, let's say equally responsible and equally, let's say equally facilitating and co-facilitating. So it's not just one person being in charge of stuff. Usually what we happen is we divide it by topic. So let's say we are training a topic that I'm more experienced with. I will take more of the content side, and then my wife will take more of let's say the social side or the practicality side. And then when we're doing topics that she's more experienced in, she will take the content side, and I will take more of the process side or the procedure side, and like group building and so on. I think if there is a big gap in experience, it works well as like to have one that is slightly more responsible for the overarching thing and then someone supporting. But I think this is also a really good way to get a lot of experience if you're not that experienced right away, to have someone that can kind of mentor you and kind of take you through and kind of have, let's say, the final responsibility so you can try out different things, but also to build up the confidence to then do it on your own. I would rarely, unless you're doing short-term activities, let's say 2-3 days maybe, I would not recommend doing activities where you're just one, just because it is quite exhaustive and it puts a lot of risk in the whole activity. Like if you're two people, and this is what we are doing now also, is all the material is prepared in advance. And so if something happens, let's say I don't know, I eat too much at dinner and I'm too full to train, I don't know. Or let's say I get a stomach bug or something and I cannot facilitate for the morning. My co-trainer can step in because they already know all the content, and a lot of the trainings we have some experience in before, so they already know kind of what the idea is and so on. And so the training doesn't blow up, let's say, or break because something happened, right? It's also, again, risk and risk mitigation. I think this is really crucial, especially also since you have a responsibility for the participants who then spend their so much time going and expecting to learn. So yeah, you should also account for this.
Totally. I think it's a bit tricky when we ask you, because your co-trainer is your wife, no? So you already have a super top symbiosis. I've seen it. But for instance, I will flip out the question. Imagine that you need to implement, like you get an offer, okay? Someone tells you, okay, this is your field of expertise. We can invite you, and we have already another trainer, and we would like you to work together with this trainer. What would be your requirements? What would you ask for in order to be able to work with this trainer as a co-trainer?
Yeah, I would very much like to know the profile of this trainer, their experience, what type of activities they've done before, and I would very much like to talk to them ahead of time, simply because to get to know them, because a lot of I find that a lot of co-training work relies on trust, and it relies on you being able to count on the other party. And a lot of the communication, like in a successful co-training, is that let's say I'm facilitating and you're the co-trainer, and you realize that, oh, it would be very nice if somebody was, I don't know, doing graphical recording as we are mentioning this, that you just go up and do it instead of waiting for me to ask, because I am also managing the group, also managing the content, also being on track of time, and so on. And so a lot of this type of playing off against each other I find is really important for a good or a successful facilitation. And so building this trust ahead of time, usually also if you have the time to go and meet them, let's say a day before, and get to know the person, that usually helps. Otherwise, again, knowing the content in advance, making sure that you prepare the things that you're responsible for, and knowing what they are responsible for, these type of things, and that requires a lot of work. And this is why it also helps that you work with people that you know and care for and trust. And so if you have these long-term partnerships with co-trainers, that's usually the best way to do it. But also I recognize that that's very difficult to build and takes a long time. But yeah, most of the stuff that we do is also we work with logistic partners that we have long working relationship with, and that we know and trust. And every time we work with those people, it's always so easy. And every time we work with new people, it's always a lot of, I know that I am supposed to trust them, but also I have this in the back of my mind all the time. Okay, but what if I can't? But what if I can't? Until you build up the necessary trust.
Totally. I think also as a participant, for instance, I feel it a lot when you see a cohesive team, when they have trust and everything, and when you see like a more artificial team that is being like, okay, this one is hired and the other one is also paid work and stuff. It's not the same as if they are already friends, they know each other, or maybe not even friends, because friendship can pop up, but we are also in a professional environment. But you see that these people connect, and when you see that, like, the delivery is totally top. So I take that account, that if at some moment I need to work with someone, I will try to get to know the person and try to speed up at least this phase of getting to know each other, because this can raise the trust and raise the quality of the training. um keep going in, like, carrying out with talking about trainings. I know that, for instance, in my experience in Chernidul, you were also very good at managing the energy dynamics, the group dynamics, and the energy of the group. I remember that sometimes people was maybe a bit more less interested, and you were able to kick them up and cheer them up with different energizers and stuff. So what's usually the approach that you have to in order to maintain a strong group dynamics through the whole training course? Do you have some main points?
I'd say that we tend to spend about, let's say, 14 or 15% of the entire training on group building specifically. And so that might sound like a lot. It's a day. If you do a full week, like 7 working days, you take the entire first day and do group building. And we found that this works really, really well to accelerate this group building and the cohesion within the group. Building trust, building safety, like psychological safety, so people can share, and also making it easier for people to participate. Compared to I've been on other trainings where I've seen where people kind of skip the group building activities. Not necessarily that there's no group building activities, but it's not very much, and therefore people kind of feel like strangers all the way until like day 5 or 6 out of 7. And it feels like you can kind of shortcut this by just doing group building right away. So that's one thing that we do. And then secondly, what we do also is we have this ongoing group building activity throughout the whole week that we developed. It's based on an activity by I think Jane McGonigal, who is a game design researcher. And she coined this. She built this game, a version of this game, to take care of like everyday things at home with her spouse, I think it was. It's a while since I read the book. Sorry, I can give you the references if you need them.
Don't worry,
But
we can
but
we
the,
can write it down later on
yeah,
on the
but
description.
we installed the name, right, and call it Chore Wars. At least the version that we play, and I think it's grown and developed. But the idea is that there is a game that we play the entire week with cohesive groups. We kind of build the groups throughout the first day, and then every day there is activities within the group. So also enhances this feeling of being part of something larger. And then, of course, we do individual like these energizers every session. We do bridging, and we talk about reflection, and we have reflection groups and so on. So there's a lot of work going into building the group, and very deliberate work, making sure that people feel very comfortable with each other very early on, so they can learn, so they have a space where they can learn more, and so they have a space where they can, interact and get to know each other on a much deeper level than what you would do if you hadn't this trust.
Totally, totally. I must say that since we played Horse Wars in your project, I took the idea and we started also implementing it as also in youth exchanges, for instance, because I thought it was a great idea to make the people also connect with them and create separated teams. And this feeling of belonging was raised by a lot, and people had a lot of fun also with those games, because you can also make it as games, no, like, okay, get points by implementing an energizer, so people decide which energizer they are going to implement, and they have fun. um great ideas, and yeah, I think I totally share it. We should spend time on it, because at the end, projects are people, right? Like, also the expectations of most of the people, when you ask them the first day what is your expectation, is, okay, I want to have fun, I want to also connect with other people. So if they are there in your project and you don't give them the space to also connect with other people, I think even though maybe the training quality sessions is super high, they will get out of the project saying, well, yes, I mean, I learned a lot, but this is Erasmus. It's not just to get education, I guess, no, and get training. It's also to get something deeper. So I hope that people that is listening to us right now is learning a lot from these strategies. The Horse Wars, or also called like Houses, is kind of a Harry Potter style game, no, where people are getting points through the days. You can also shape it in your own way. Sometimes Energizer gets points, or maybe uploading photos get points, or different ways to get points. But it's very, very engaging for participants. Um, okay, I'm changing a bit the topic. When we were starting, you mentioned something that is very crucial, and well, professionals know about it, but people who is starting Erasmus, maybe they are not that aware of it, which is the back end of projects. No, you were mentioning that you've been working for a long time in Kaae Action Tools. Now the projects are fully developed, and now you have the final products, and you are going to implement them. So maybe we can talk a bit more about how this backend, let's say, part of the projects work. How do you organize them? How do you maybe enjoy them? How do you coordinate with other team members on it?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, usually there's a lot that goes into, let's say, the back end, right? The backstage, depending on like which framework you want to use. If you want to use service design, like what usually people see at the training is that what's called front stage, right?
Hmm.
It's the activity being implemented. Um, it's the tools that you're using at that particular time. It's the agenda. It's the people that are there. It's the outcomes and so on. And I find also, let's say, a lot of the new, like, let's say, younger, less experienced trainers that we are trying to bring into the activities that we're doing here locally, but also with some of the activities that we're doing, has this expectation that that is all there is, right? So
Yes.
if you just do what was shown uh, in a training, you did what the facilitator did, then you can be a facilitator. Well, while that is of course necessary, it's not necessarily all of it. Like a lot of work, not for me time wise as much as it used to be, but a lot of work goes into making sure that the content is the right content, that the materials that you're using are the right ones, that the agenda works with the group that you're bringing and the topic that you're using, that it works with the venue, that it works with the people there, that it brings out the skills in the training team, that um, and that you can account for all the things that don't happen. Uh,
Hmm.
my wife and I usually jokingly mentions at the trainings is that at the end that, oh, we had a whole training that we didn't do. Like we have an entire other 7 full days of content that we didn't do. And while that might be a little bit hyperbolic because it's not that fleshed out, but there is a lot of stuff that we're like, okay, we have 2 options for this activity depending on if the weather is good, or we have multiple versions of this depending on whether or not the participants are tired after their let's say culture visits. Sometimes we give them some time to decompress by going and visiting the local area and then doing some few activities. And sometimes people come back super refreshed because they finally had some time to decompress, and sometimes people come back super tired because they were stuck outside, hanging out, going and visiting the cultural sites and so on, and then coming back very late. And so we can change on a dime, but participants only see the thing that we do, not the thing that we could have done.
Totally.
And so some things that we do a lot that we really take pride in is that we develop plans, like, let's say, we call them session plans, right? It's like minute to minute, what is the plan for what is going to happen? What is the outcome of this activity? Who's responsible? What are the materials we need? What needs to be prepared ahead of time? What needs to be done? And what is the outcome? And then we have multiple versions of these, and some of these we bring from previous trainings. I mean, you can only do name game activities in so many ways. I mean, you can do it in many ways, but we have found ways that work. So we bring the same or similar activities quite often, or we have a palette of energizers that we're using, and we have a palette of team building exercises and so on. So we're bringing some stuff that we have previously used or previously tested and see. And sometimes we bring in new. We almost always try to bring in activities we haven't done before to test them out and see if they're worth expanding upon or worth bringing in other contexts. And then there's a lot of work also afterwards, like what worked, what didn't work, talking with the organizers, talking about what they like, what they didn't like, and so on. So, and then of course writing reports and preparing for the next trainings. And all of this stuff participants don't see because it happens before the training and after the training, and oftentimes in the evenings and the early mornings before sessions and after sessions.
Totally. I think that they see the I mean, when I was starting in Erasmus and then I went deeper into the professional side, I realized that the activities are like the peak of the iceberg, no? And there is like a huge mountain just hidden. That is really the work that it requires, no? Like preparation, writing the first project, coordination with partners, people coming. And I remember it is funny because people don't realize that sometimes when we are trainers, and this might happen to you, maybe if you have it fully prepared in advance, not that much, but I remember that, for instance, most of in your project it happened, and in other projects I've been with, another trainings I've been, it happened as well. The first 2-3 days, trainers are not that much around with participants. They are more like hidden, no? And usually what I've heard from other participants is that they thought that they are maybe having their private party with the logistic teams and stuff. And it's like, you cannot imagine that you may end up going to sleep at 1 a.m. just organizing the next day, right? And that's what we are doing. And this is not seen, no? It's totally invisible for participants.
True. But it's also to say that this doesn't mean that you have to do all of this work to deliver a good training. But my aim, or our aim, is not necessarily to deliver a good training. It is to deliver a good training regardless of what happens, right? It is to make sure that the floor of what the content that we provide and the outcomes that we provide are as high as possible. So like, even if I break a leg halfway through, we still deliver a good training. Even if the AC goes out and it's 30 degrees outside and we cannot work in the working room anymore, we still deliver a good training. Or even if the tent blows away that we're doing the training in, we still deliver a good training. Like, and so on and so on. Like, so that's why we do all this prep work, is to make sure, again, to mitigate the risks, to make sure that, and also to make sure that the type of work that we do today is as good as it can be, and the next time we do some work, it's even better. So like also building up knowledge and writing down outcomes and so on, to make sure that we keep pushing ourselves also, so we can always deliver our best.
Yeah, that's having high standards. And it's also coming from experience, because it's true that sometimes we are. I mean, in my experience as trainer, it's not that I develop that much. it's also, I guess that you got it from experience, no, that you have, as you said, like a lot of more resources, and this is coming totally with experience. But it's true that right now I'm reflecting, and maybe someone is listening and is also reflecting about it, that if we want to be good trainers, we should be that ready, and that takes time, that takes experience, that takes preparation. Well, little by little, we will get there. But it's true that you are tackling many of the fears that I have as a trainer. No, when I go to a training, it's like, oof, what happens if this fails, this fails, this fails? I don't have that prepared. Over time, you are getting more comfortable, but it's true that it takes more time. Um, Maybe talking a bit more about this backstage, like some topics, some tips, excuse me, about how do you manage time, the team, the logistics under a training course.
Yep. So I mean, we we have a more or less, at least for us, a more or less established framework for how we like how much content that we can deliver in a day. So we do about 4 sessions a day, maximum an hour and a half. That's from our experience how much people can handle. And then we have quite long breaks, and we try really hard to uh, like prioritize the breaks. Or oftentimes, what happens in let's say, I also, since I also have a professional career in healthcare, uh, in professional settings, there's a tendency to say breaks. We take breaks just whenever, right? It's not that high a priority because, of course, the content is the priority. But I actually find it's the reverse. The breaks are the most important part because that's when all the things that you have given the participants, it kind of settles, and they kind of get the time to think about it and discuss it. And
Mhm.
very often what I find is that if you don't give participants enough breaks, then they will spend the sessions writing emails, or they will spend the sessions answering on their phone, or they will spend the session discussing with each other about the previous session and not paying attention to the current session. And
Mhm.
so giving them the time to decompress, to check the things that they need to check from back home, to, you know, go to the toilet if they need to do that, drink some coffee and so on, and also for you to decompress a bit. I think that is super important. And I think in experience often says that, oh, the more content, the more better. But it's actually, for me, breaks first and then plan content around the breaks and then respect the breaks as much as possible.
That's interesting. What is for you a long break?
I would say we usually have 2 short breaks of half an hour each, and then we have a long break of, including lunch, of about 2 hours. That's how much we try to plan. And people also, when I talk about this in my professional, where I also do trainings, people say 2 hours, that is insane. But then also, what I see is that the people on the trainings, they come back after, first they have half an hour lunch, and then they go out, and then they have they talk to each other, they hang out, they go explore the local area a bit, and then they come back and they're refreshed and they're ready to work. And then when you give half an hour lunch breaks at the professional conferences or whatever, people are just in the afternoon, they're completely drained. They're like, there's nothing behind the eyes. They're just like, and so I'm like, then why plan the second half of the day if people are not paying attention, right?
Mhm.
And so this way we also find that we can push participants more. Um, and by pushing, then we get more content, and then people get a better experience, and in the end we get better outcomes.
Totally. Yes, I think that we have implemented that structure of 1 hour and a half break, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours break, 1 hour and a half break, and 1 hour and a half by default. But it's true that it makes everything more comfortable. And if someone needs to, yeah, decompress by making some sports, they have the time to do it. No, like in 30 minutes, maybe you cannot make a super long run or super strong workout, but you can have it. If you need to make a call, you can have it. If you need to go to the bathroom, or you need to take a shower, or you need to maybe even sleep a bit, not take a fast nap, that sometimes happens. uh, yeah, it keeps the energy high, no, at the end, when you assure that people in the when participants are coming to the training session, they are going to have, or they, if they are taking care also of themselves, they should have high energy and they might be engaged. Top techniques. Top techniques. Well, I wanted to also, since you've been also working in AI, artificial intelligence, and is like the top topic right now, but you are also working as an engineer and you are helping taking decisions to the clinical staff. How is the role of technology let's be more specific, maybe into digital technologies. Most of the times people talk about technology and refers to digital technologies, but we will be specific here. What's the role of digital technologies in trainings currently in Erasmus Plus?
Well, I would say that at least when you talk about digital technologies, of course, people have been using this for many, many years. Like lots of writing and application forms and so on, are all digitized now. They're gone are the days when you had to sign mandates by hand and send them in by post. So, I mean, this has been embraced already through the European Union. But I mean, what is the big topic right now is, of course, generative AI and how artificial intelligence can be used. And I think a lot of times it's being used in I mean, we use it, of course, in sparring, coming up with ideas, and then also to help us write some of the stuff that we already know how to write, but we don't like care to write again. You know what I mean? Instead of copy pasting, we have, oh, this here's a piece of text that we already written. Here's the content that we want it to fit in. Please make a draft, and then we edit it. So like it really speeds up the work, like administrative work that we have to do.
For writing is gold, no? Like ChatGPT is gold.
Yeah, and it makes it super. It really saves a lot of time and frees up a lot of time to do other work. Um, I also think that it's a very good sparring partner to just bounce random ideas off, especially if you don't have a big knowledge base behind it. Also, there are a lot of tools for helping looking for articles or content and stuff that you can dive deeper into, and helping it research is really, really nice. Um, and then we also use it a bit. We have this idea of, let's say the Erasmus guide, let's say, and a
Mhm.
couple of other European Union documents to upload those into the context of some of these large language models, and then asking questions to help you find what you're looking for instead of having to go through and search like you used to do. So now you can ask, and then of course you have to go and verify, but at least you know what you're looking for. It could be um, what are the reimbursement levels based on travel if they changed recently, like, so you can just look for this instead of having to search for the documents. And sometimes it's faster to search, but a lot of times it's faster to look for things, especially if you're going into, let's say you've done a lot of key action 1 work and now you want to look into key action 2 and trying to understand this. It's a very good way to get started, at least.
Mhm. That's wild. I was just thinking that it would be wild to have a GPT model with all the Erasmus Plus guide there, and you can just go to this model and ask a specific question, like what's the range for flights if someone is coming from Malta to Rome, and it can calculate it alone by itself. That's wild.
Yeah. Well, and while the thing can't do that yet, but at least what we have done, and we did it also last year, is that I think it's OpenAI has this way where you can, they call it make your own GPT, right? So
Yes.
you upload your own context to this, and then you make it official. And we made one for like youth work where we did a training last year about AI and youth work, and all the outcomes we uploaded into this, and the Erasmus Plus guides and the project description and a couple of other things. And then young people could just ask it when they wanted to know what was the outcome of this project and how can I do more. It was super cool, and it's only gotten better since last year. It feels like, you know, experience in the training world, it moves at a certain pace, and then AI just works exponentially faster. It feels like it's already been 10 years of experience in AI since last year. It gets so tiresome trying to keep up with all of it.
Totally, and this is another question. Like, is there any other way or any other tool that you integrate actively in trainings, like that you use specifically when you're training for some reason or some purpose or with some specific goal?
Like you're thinking of the digital tools. I mean, we are in the AI trainings themselves. We're showing a lot of different tools, right? We're showing things to make music. We're showing things to make videos. We're showing things to make images. We're showing things to compile research and then query it and help you write stuff based on your own, like your own voice, like recordings or things that you've already done. How can you make AI writing sound and feel like what you would write personally? Um, in a lot of the activities that we're doing, mainly the digital tools like our generative AI outside of AI field, we mainly use it for the backend, and in the front end we tend to actually use very simple tools like dice or slideshows or flip charts or like physical materials, because when we are in a physical space, we find it really enhances the feeling and the immersiveness of the activities that we do. The things are in physical space, but so mainly for the research part and in the planning phases.
Totally, totally. Yeah, it's true that it's difficult to find an alternative, right? To put flip charts on the walls, because also the experience that the participant is going through, feeling that you are making a progress. No, first day there is an empty wall, and third day there is already there is a development. That's a psychological effect that I think is difficult still to get through AI or through any other digital tool. But for sure there will be more options popping up, and also like it's one of the horizontal dimensions of Erasmus, like digitalization. And sometimes it's difficult to integrate it, right? Because I think this is maybe more of a personal opinion of mine, maybe you have a different one, but is that actually Erasmus is very human and social based type of projects. No, you want to be there with people, and we are actually sometimes not even taking that much the phone when we are there. We want to be present, no, with human connection, one to one. And if we go through the field of, okay, now we need to do blending mobility activities in which half of the training must be online, uh, I don't know. I think it doesn't really resonate with the main soul of the program. What do you think?
I think I think that there are opportunities in this space, but it has to be deliberately crafted for it. Like, so I can imagine doing, let's say, a blended mobility where you do a huge simulation activity where the digital people are doing one part aspect of the simulation and the people in the space are doing a different part, and the interplay is super interesting. But that's really difficult to pull off, and a lot of the work that we're doing right now is not really geared towards this. I also personally think that most of the value of going on Erasmus trainings is the experience itself. A lot of the knowledge building that happens there. Like, the materials themselves are not necessarily super complex. And if you're just looking to learn the material, it's probably faster to just read it in articles or books or whatever. But
Hmm.
there's so much more to the act of learning than just reading it and knowing the words. It's also like feeling it on an emotional level. It's being in the space, like spatially, so like looking around and seeing things happening. It's like, the as you also mentioned, the interplay between participants and the content and the trainers and so on. And it's also like the relationships that you're building and so on. And this is very difficult to do online, because
Hmm.
a lot of the senses are just cut off. You're just seeing people. You don't hear people the same way. You don't. I mean, smells and tastes and touch is not necessarily things that we are thinking about when we're thinking about learning. But like, all the senses are important in order to retain information.
Hmm.
So I think it's much better to have the Erasmus activities or these type of activities in physical space. And I feel the investment that people are bringing is really giving them much more than if they were doing the same by going on a webinar 7 days.
100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. Let's see how we manage to send this message to the people who is correcting our projects, and also to the directors of national agencies. But somehow we'll need to send them this message that is complicated, because one of the main goals of the program is actually to put us together. Right now you said no, we need to make half of the project or somehow be more distant. It's not going alongside. um, well, Fred, I'm very happy for having this talk with you. We are almost closing, and once we are closing, I would like to ask you like a couple of things, like specific tips, maybe for someone who's starting from your experience. Maybe, yeah, we can start with the first one of which book would you recommend to any trainer who, I mean, what is a must-read book?
I mean, I have a joke answer. The joke answer is, of course, you need to read the Erasmus Guide. If you That's the first thing to read, right? Read this and
Chapeau.
understand. Yeah. But a lot of times it really depends on what you want to do. And I have many, many ideas. A book that I read recently that I found was super useful for also understanding how to think about workshops and so on, is called, I think it's called the Workshop Survival Guide by Robert Fitzpatrick, I think his name is. It's also for people who, I mean, I read it quite far into my journey, but I can imagine it's also being super useful for people who are not that experienced building trainings or building workshops. So this one I would recommend having a look at. It's quite short and it's very practical.
Is it open based or is a normal book that
I
we
think
might,
it's a normal book.
normal
It's
book we
yeah,
might
yeah.
buy it on Amazon, and we will put the name in the description as well, and potentially a link to Amazon. Okay. Um, the most rewarding moment in your Erasmus Plus journey.
I mean, the obvious choice here is, of course, meeting my partner, my wife. That was by far the most important part of this. And I think while this is not how every person meets, I think it was a very, very inspiring moment. And also why I'm still doing this is because we're doing it together, and it's really rewarding for us to work on this. Yeah, so I'm gonna stick with that one.
Difficult to improve that one, eh? Difficult to
True,
put very
true.
high standards. And okay, the last one, best advice for someone who wants to become a trainer.
I think that um, it's like understanding that it will not be perfect the first times, and that it is a process. Like, if you go in with the expectation that everything will be perfect the first time and there will be nothing to learn, uh, then it will be very difficult, and it will be a very long and hard process. But like going in with the mindset of it's a journey that you start on, and you are just going one step at a time and getting better as you go, and building out your experience, building out your understanding, your frameworks, your portfolio, your networks, and so on, and trying to take it one step at a time. I think that's the best advice I can give, because it is like, instead of thinking of this as like, oh, I want to be a trainer, next year I'll be a trainer. It's like, no, you'll never feel like you're done. You will always feel like there's room to grow. You'll always feel like there's more that you can do. And I think it's very healthy to just always keep that mindset and just take it easy. And then the rest will come. Then you'll look back a couple of years and be like, wow, I did not know that I could move this far. It felt impossible when I started out.
Wow, that's a good one. Step by step. We are going to close there, Fred. Thank you very, very much for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you very much for all the moments and time that you have shared with us together. We appreciate it a lot. If you are listening to this one, you can either subscribe to the YouTube channel or to the or to Spotify. We will be bringing also more and more and more guests to share knowledge and professional knowledge from the Erasmus Plus world. Today we had a great one. Thank you very much, Fred, for your time. I hope that we will meet soon again.
Yes, always a pleasure.
See you in project, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.